everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of Know Your Changemakers. And today we have a very, very special guest with us. So it gives me great pleasure to kind of introduce Sampada to all of you. And Sampada is the Chief People Officer at CocoBlu Retail right now, and she has over 15 plus years of industry experience spread across multiple segments. She's worked at Wipro, she's worked at Sandisk, and prior to this she was also working or leading Total Rewards at Western Digital, spanning India, Philippines, and Thailand as well. And overall, I think the biggest thing, Sampada, in your case, has been that the journey has evolved and you've actually done multiple roles within HR itself. So, one thing as a first question, and Know Your Changemakers is the forum that we kind of use to kind of bring in leadership as part of the interactions with our Changemakers community so that they get to understand your journeys and how your life has been and how it has evolved over the years. So the first fundamental question that always I end up asking to all the leaders that we interview is how has been the formative years for you, right? So when you look at your early career, right, what triggered that interest in HR, and let's say did your education or your early experiences play a role to kind of motivate you towards HR? If you can just share that for the audience.
Sure. Firstly, Ravi, thank you, and thanks to Darwinbox for having me over. I think it's going to be a fun conversation. Um,
Absolutely.
so, Ravi, I wish I could say that there was a grand plan where I knew exactly where I would be, and I knew that I would be in HR. But there is no such story that I can dip into.
Okay.
My journey into HR has really been a process of elimination, right? I did my graduation in Bachelor's of Mass Media. I specialized in journalism. I wanted to write, and that still continues to remain a pipe dream. At some point, I would like to do that.
Right.
I did an internship with a leading newspaper and worked with them for 3, 4 months and realized that this is probably not what I want to do. This is not chasing stories is something that requires a different DNA, which I probably don't
Right.
have. And that's when the decision to do an MBA happened. Right? The HR choice was possibly a little more easier because humanities is where the subject interest was, and I
Right.
felt like psychology or behavior, all of that is what really got my interest, and that's how HR happened, Ravi.
Fantastic. So I think broadly, it's serendipity by chance, right? For many of us, I think who've kind of ended up, and for me also, it's been a kind of similar journey wherein it was very different in terms of a career profile in corporate treasury, and from corporate treasury sales to HR tech has been quite an evolution. So each of us has a different story to tell, and so broadly from your career's perspective, right? I mean, you've gained both broader and deeper experiences across various HR functions, right? So, in the context of the Gen Z today, right? One thing that I would like to ask you is what should be their focus on gaining a broad range of experiences? Because there are two ways in which this can be approached. Either you look at, let's say, getting a diverse experience, or you can look at specializing and go deep in an area, right? So I just want to understand your thoughts on what's maybe there's not a one size fits all, depends on each individual, but what's your thought on, let's say, is it better to look at a broad range of experiences, or you look at a specialization or going deep in an area?
So, Ravi, I would say that when one starts, one should start as a generalist, right? Because you get the exposure into all facets of HR. But very often, HR folks get criticized for not for being fluffy with their subject expertise, right? Which is where I believe, I strongly believe that one should have one particular domain that you become an expert in. So it could be either in HR operations, it could be in total rewards, it could be in L&D, but that one thing which will become a differentiator for you as compared to a generalist. Because generalist roles, yes, they will allow you the breadth. However, they don't give you that subject matter expertise, or it doesn't give you the credibility that you would need as an HR professional. So, therefore, I would always recommend one stint of deep learning in one particular facet of HR after you have been through a few, to know that, okay, this is probably what my interest lies in.
Right. So you're kind of saying like a T structure in a way.
Yeah.
So go one deep and then a broader horizon.
And
Makes
probably
sense.
keep alternating also, right? So there is
Right.
no set formula to this. Do a generalist role for some time, be an
Hmm.
HRBP, pick up a role that will allow you to get into the depth of one particular subject, and then go back to
Hmm.
a generalist role. So there is no
Got it.
formula to it, but definitely my recommendation would be to have subject matter expertise in one subject so that your credibility becomes high.
Fantastic. So just a corollary to that question. So one angle to it was like the functional side of HR and let's exposure to there. The other question is that should the focus be then on like concentrating on one industry, or should one look at getting explored to more different industry verticals and expand the scope there?
So the HR nuances are different for different industries, right? And I can sort of dip into, I have exposure in three today. So there's the IT services, there's the semiconductor industry, and then there is the retail industry, which I'm in now. And depending on the pace of the organization, the nuances of HR also change. Now, again, if you're looking for that breadth of experience, a change in industry does help you understand how HR can be different in different industries. Uh, how does HR adapt to the pace of business? How does HR adapt to the needs of that business? Will be different basis the industry that you're in. So to gain that breadth, it does make sense. But then there are so many HR stalwarts who have just been in one organization and really understood that organization to the point where they're almost business leaders now, right? That's also another way of thinking. But for me, it's not that I started looking out for different industries. I was looking out for different roles. The role was the focal point for me where this I was doing an HRBP role, and then I got an opportunity to do HRBP and L&D, and that's how the expansion happened, which was not possible in my first organization. A smaller organization allowed me that. And now I've reached a point where I was able to lead an HR function completely, right? So it's not that I set out saying that I want to move into an e-commerce retail space, but I was looking for roles that allow me to explore all of the roles that are there in HR. So my decisions have been more role based than industry based.
So overall, from a people perspective, right? I think you talked about three industries primarily. So you talked about the ITES, then having worked in semiconductors, and now in retail. So has there been like any one or two pivotal differences between, let's say, from a people standpoint in these three segments that you've come across in your experience?
So from an HR practices standpoint,
Yes. Yes.
yeah. So in an IT services sort of a setup, people productivity becomes a large conversation,
Hmm.
where everything is pivotal on the bench that you have or don't have, can afford.
Hmm.
The cost structures are very different, and therefore HR operates in a certain manner. Whereas
Hmm.
in a semiconductor space, where people is not the highest cost, it is your
Hmm.
infrastructure that is the highest cost. The
Correct.
view on people's spend becomes very different, and
Hmm.
therefore your budgets are a little different. Your ability
Hmm.
to make those decisions on compensation, etc., become a little easier because
Hmm.
it's not as tight fisted as it would be in an organization where people cost is the highest cost, right?
Right.
So depending on the business structure and where the costs are, HR functions very differently. And I can see that in the
Hmm.
retail space also right now, where
Hmm.
uh, we there is a little bit of comfort with churn
Hmm.
because the churn helps one bringing in new talent to also
Hmm.
helps us manage our cost structures, where again similar to an IT services organization, people is the largest cost, right?
Right.
Whereas you flip to a product IT product organization,
Hmm.
that may not be the case, where you would do whatever it takes to retain talent because the subject matter expertise remains with the individual, and
True.
drain of that individual has an impact on business as well.
So on a lighter note, I mean, I don't know whether I'm putting you on a spot here. Any favorites in these three segments that you've worked on? I'm inclined that you probably say that retail is the best. Any favorites at all?
I would actually, and I don't want to say it because I'm in this role
Yeah,
currently. It's a little got to do with your personality also, right? I
true.
do tend to get bored with monotony, and I think
Okay.
retail and this particular role has ensured
Hmm.
that there is no monotony. So there
Fantastic.
are days where, and I also head facilities for CocoBlu. So there are days where I'm discussing what the succession planning should be like, and the next meeting
Right.
is on, giving approvals for which pest control will operate in the building. So it's all very, very fun.
Fantastic, fantastic. That's like a broad spectrum that you're literally covering. So one thing which I wanted to, and this is obviously very, very close to my heart as well, because my wife also went through maternity recently, and she's also trying to get integrated back into the workforce. And to be honest, from where it was like 5 6 years back to where it is now, things have definitely improved. But one question which I had is that do you believe there has been like a shift in terms of how maternity is being looked at today, and how are these changes kind of impacting the future of work, because you've gone through it yourself? So I just want to understand what is your thoughts around it. I mean, I'm sure that there is a lot more that needs to be done.
I think with so much of younger workforce coming into our demographic,
Hmm.
and the focus now, and I think there are very few organizations that don't understand the need for diversity, right? The need
Correct.
for having women talent. I think with
Hmm.
both of these factors together, managing maternity transitions is going to become a reality for businesses. And I can speak
Hmm.
about how it is impacting me today. It was very
Hmm.
different in my previous organization where the pace was very different from what the pace in a retail setup is. So
Hmm.
today, if there is a woman going on maternity leave, it has a direct impact on business because there is nobody who's manning those particular brands, right? Um, so how do we handle situations like that?
Hmm.
And that's really been the push, and that's where I think HR plays a very large role to show the mirror to the business that hey, you want to maintain a diverse organization. On one hand, if
Hmm.
you're saying that diversity is important to you, you have to
Hmm.
enable different policies that will help diversity candidates to flourish.
True.
One thing that we are working on is on creating a little bit of bench, right? So
Hmm.
when there are folks going on, and which is not something that happens in a retail setup. So if there are
Hmm.
folks going on maternity leave, we will hire an additional headcount so
Hmm.
that the person that role is filled up.
Hmm.
However, when the person comes back, they transition back to their original role.
Hmm.
Unless they say that they want to move it to something new, then that's a different conversation. But they
Hmm.
transition back into their original role. And whenever there is any attrition that happens, we don't backfill over there because there is this
Right.
additional person who's already there. So it just
Right.
helps maintain security for the individual. So
Got
one
it.
thing is the lip service of saying that, hey, diversity is important to us, but the other
Hmm.
is how is HR enabling this diversity to stay and retain this diversity, right?
Absolutely.
This has been a pet peeve of mine of how it's only on LinkedIn that you remember that on 8th of March every year that this is important, and that's
Yeah.
something that I tell my team that we're not going to do. We're not going to give out
Hmm.
roses on that day. We're not going to cut a cake.
Right.
Do policy changes throughout the year, and that for me is what is our job. It's not to give out roses.
Absolutely, and that's fantastic to hear, Sampada. I think that's probably what is needed. I think uh, commemorating a day is great, but the intent of it has to be like a consistent effort on that direction. So
Yeah.
fantastic to hear that you're doing
No,
that
and of
already.
course, and I'm not saying that it is not important to celebrate that day. Of course it is, but
Yeah.
we need to take action and not just have lip service, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So one thing again, just next question as a thought to that as well, right? So as a leader who's kind of successfully balanced work and family life, and you're juggling multiple things at work itself. So what strategies do you generally tend to deploy to kind of effectively maintaining a healthy work-life integration, if I may call that? And what is it that you would probably want to share with let's say especially the returning mothers, for example, in terms of how you would kind of advise them to navigate their journeys? So any thoughts in terms of how are you looking at a healthy work life integration and learnings for others?
So I think what has helped me the most is communication on both sides, right? Communication at home, communication at
Hmm.
work.
Right.
Um, Very often, and this was something that I did in the first few months of returning back from my maternity leave, where you want
Hmm.
to keep things separate. You want to have these nice little boxes where one doesn't get mixed with the other, but life is not such. It's a big hot mess and you got to deal with it on an everyday basis.
True.
And you only are able to deal with it if you communicate one with the most important stakeholder, who's your manager. Let
Hmm.
the manager know that, hey, this is what is possible for me today. um, it might change tomorrow. However, this is how
Hmm.
much is possible today. And
Right.
similarly at home, I think just having that conversation with your spouse that I'm going to be working,
Hmm.
I need that support, and be very open to asking for help. And that help can come in many forms. It can come in the form of
True.
parents, it can come in the form
Hmm.
of paid help, it can come in the form of daycares.
Hmm.
And don't carry that guilt of taking help from somebody else rather than not
Hmm.
doing it yourself, because
Right.
you can't stretch yourself thin. So I think just awareness that, hey, I need help, being vulnerable to the biggest stakeholders in your life. One is your manager, the other is your spouse.
Yeah.
That has been key for me, where you just communicate at the right time and let people know what your needs are.
Any, and this is again, so slight shift in the conversation. This is, thank you for sharing your insights on this front, because I think this is a very important topic that needs to get discussed, especially with leadership, because a lot of people can learn from your experiences. But now coming to another very interesting segment. So, last 3 months, I mean, any interesting or like super exciting projects that you've been working on that you'd probably like to share with the audience?
So I'll talk a little bit about CocoBlu. I think that's relevant to this subject. Uh, so CocoBlu has been in existence for the last 2.5 years now. We are an online retail organization. We buy and sell products from top brands in the country today, and we operate mainly on Amazon. Um, we have now reached a stage where the honeymoon period is over. The first 2.5 years were really about setting up processes, understanding how the ecosystem works, training people on tools. And now that that part is over, people want to understand what their career prospects are. They want to understand what is next for them. So one thing that the HR team has done, along with the business leaders, of course, is create what is CocoBlu's value proposition for employees. Um, if people come to us saying that, hey, what is my next path, or what is my growth over here? Um, Building perspectives of what career growth means. Career growth means X to me, Y to Ravi, and therefore, what is it that CocoBlu will do to cater to both Ravi and Sampada? And that's really been the exciting part, where we initiated new processes. So we didn't have an internal job rotation program. We didn't need it. It was just 2.5 years. So that's something that we've created, will get rolled out in the next 1 month. There's many programs for learning, which we will again roll out in the next few months. So that really, the building process has really been exciting for
Fantastic.
me and for the team as well.
Right.
So that's the exciting thing that's happening at CocoBlu.
Fantastic. I'm great to hear this. So, I mean, 2.5 years in terms of evolution, how has the journey been personally for you? I mean, in terms of what it was in the initial first 6 months to now, in terms of, if you could just spend a little bit time talking about how your experience has been, that will
Yeah.
be great for the audience to hear.
So it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, Ravi.
Okay.
I think starting from not knowing what what the industry is, and therefore getting used to the pace of work in the
Hmm.
organization was something that took some time.
Right.
Having a new team, it was a team that was already there in the organization before me. So them
Okay.
getting used to me getting used to them, having that settling in period was what took time.
Right.
But I think there were some pivotal points that happened. So year one, where the performance management really got ironed out, we put
Right.
systems into process. Year two, at the end of year two, is where this careers bit has started. And
Hmm.
largely, I've had a stable team to sort of help me navigate through this.
Mm.
So it's been when I say roller coaster, it's largely been the exciting loops and hoops that
Right.
happen. Um, but yeah, it's been a very exciting ride for 2.5 years.
Fantastic. So now getting into one interesting segment, which is the journey with Darwinbox, and it's been a delight to work with CocoBlu, the entire team as well. And there's a lot. There's obviously still coming ahead. But one question, of course, that comes to mind is this entire journey with Darwinbox, right? I mean, are there any high points that you would like to talk about in terms of how it has probably influenced, let's say, the evolution of workforce at CocoBlu, or how it has impacted change management at CocoBlu overall? So, if you could talk about the journey with Darwinbox so far.
Fortunately, Ravi, I think we are in an environment where adoption of tools is very high. Our demographic is also such that they're comfortable with using tools. Uh, Darwinbox sort of swooped in when we were 4 or 5 months old. We had to get started with having just a system that holds all our records, right? That was really the start. Um, then we moved into, and this was something that we wanted to do right off the bat, because for us, performance management was a huge conversation with all of our employees, because we wanted to drive a performance culture. And in order to do that, we needed to have the right set of systems that allow us to do it. A system that will help us put in the goals, a system that will help us do our processes. We have a interesting 28 blocker analysis that we do for each of our employees, 28 blocker grid. And we needed a partner to help put all of those pieces together. Um, and while we were building, we realized that, hey, there are different ways in which we want to do this assessment, different views that should go to both the manager, the employee. We wanted a 60 to be built into this. Um, and I think at every step of the way, even if Darwinbox did not have the product ready, there are solutions that were found for us, right? And we continue to evolve. Not that it is, and no process is 100% perfect, um, but we did have everything that we wanted in one system. We today have a system where the goals are extremely transparent. So Sampada sitting in the beginning of 2024 knows the goals of everybody in the organization, and not just because I'm HR, but because as an employee I have access to everybody else's goals and targets. So that level of transparency, and also the tracking of the goals does not happen individually. We have a tool that helps monitor the goals, and that tool now, whatever is the achievement, gets imported directly into Darwinbox. So there is no sort of fuzziness around what my achievements are. It is all very known. And that is what is really driving our performance culture also, because it's just visibility. Our goals are tied to our variable pay. Again, Darwinbox helps us see what the variable pay will end up being, right? So it is, I think this process has really helped us drive transparency in our performance management system.
Fantastic. Just wanted to, and out of curiosity, I mean, you mentioned the 28 grid. I mean, for the benefit of the audience, if you can just elaborate a bit around that. Sounded a
So
very interesting thing.
So we assess our employees on performance and potential, and the rating
Okay.
scales are 7 on performance, 4 on potential.
Right.
So this is not something that we expose to employees. It's more an internal grade, so that
Right.
all of our planning, compensation planning, etc., happens around that.
Hmm.
But and this is a process that we've adopted from Amazon. We've taken some of their best practices. It
Right.
helps us create a larger continuum than having people fixated in like 5 boxes or 3 boxes,
Hmm.
etc. It helps us
True.
give a larger continuum. Managers are a lot more
Hmm.
comfortable having those conversations.
Right. Fantastic. I think this, obviously, I mean, I don't want to delve deeper into it because obviously it will be your company specific things as well. But I think this is good to know larger from a context of what the audience would like to hear as well. So, one area everyone is talking about is looking at automation, right? And how can it enable processes a lot better. So, from an automation standpoint, so other than performance, has there been any avenues where you've kind of worked with Darwinbox and it has kind of helped you scale up processes, or you've seen significant improvement due to automation,
Yeah.
or overall
Um,
improvement in operational efficiency?
So our recruitment module is completely with Darwinbox.
Right.
We're a 240 odd sized organization. So when we started, we had not looked at the recruitment module because we thought that we're not really going to be hiring too many people.
Yeah.
It's going to peak at some point. But even the small number of hires at any given point in time, we'll maybe have like some 7 or 8 positions that are open, which is
Right.
not very large from an organization
Hmm.
perspective.
Right.
However, maintaining maintaining the productivity, maintaining the headcount is something that we wanted to have large control over. So
Right.
the recruitment module really helped us do that, and our hiring process
Hmm.
is a little quirky. We For every interview, for every candidate, there are minimum of 6 rounds of interviews that happen.
Wow.
So there's a lot
Okay.
of data that gets generated at the end of every conversation,
Right.
and our hit rate is pretty low. So if
Hmm.
for one candidate we would screen anything between 120 to 140 resumes,
Okay.
and therefore managing of that database, having
Hmm.
a system that allows us to track all of the applications that have come in, that's
Hmm.
something that we started feeling a need for, almost a year after CocoBlu was set up. And that's
Right.
when Darwinbox helped and set up the recruitment module for us,
Hmm.
even sifting of CVs, conversations with potential employees. So when we started our employee referral program,
Hmm.
it was managed offline initially. Huge
Right.
noise around how communication doesn't go out on time. Uh,
Hmm.
the people who have referred have no idea if the person has gotten selected. And I think the
Right.
minute that we got the employee referral program onto Darwinbox, all of those questions got solved. Um,
Fantastic.
Communication goes out in a timely
Right.
manner. Customization of that communication is possible. So I think it
Right.
really helped bring a lot of peace to our process.
Great. Great to hear this, Sampada. So I think one of the things that we're trying to work on very closely with customers as well is building this ecosystem within customer leadership as well, right? And there is a lot that we're trying to do within change makers to make that happen. And of course, your interview is obviously one such thing that we're trying to do with a lot of leaders as well. So one question which I generally had was like, when you look at HR overall, looking ahead as you continue to leverage Darwinbox as well to kind of do a lot more transformation and automation, what are the primary goals as a leader that you're looking at over the next 6 months to like 1 year, right? And how can kind of Darwinbox help you leverage in order to achieve that vision that you have set for yourself?
So the large ticket items would be creating an organization that is sustainable, right? And sustainable in terms of building leadership from within, um, managing people from the standpoint that there is no slack in the system. Everybody has the appropriate goals that are known. Everybody is working on the right amount of productivity. And along with that, having employees who are engaged, who are healthy, and who enjoy working with us. Um, and getting, our processes need to marry the two. So if I have to paint a picture of how HR automation could help me do that, um, in an ideal world, I would like to have one system of truth which helps me monitor all of this, right? It helps me monitor productivity. It helps me plan for my succession. Helps me integrate my benefits within the system, where insurance enrollment happens through one portal. I have today various vendors who I work with. All of them have their own logins. It's not the best employee experience. I would want to have one seamless communication that goes out to employees. And I feel like that is something that would be an aspirational state to be in.
Fantastic. I think we'll always work together to ensure that that happens and that vision becomes a reality as well. Sampada, now putting you a bit on the spot, there's a sort of a rapid fire segment that we do towards the end. And there are some quick questions that I will ask. And request you to not think too much and just go with the flow in terms of what comes to your mind.
Sure, this feels like
So,
this is exciting.
so first question. Okay, so how do you? Also, what is your go-to in terms of de-stressing after a long day?
Netflix,
Okay, anything specific that you're watching right now?
something very mindless. One of those reality shows which completely takes you to a different zone. Yeah,
Okay, okay. So we are living vicariously through a lot of those Netflix journeys today. So, okay, that's one. Okay. Now, if you could have lunch with one famous leader, right? And I'd probably start off with saying the ones who are alive.
yeah.
Who would that be? And let's say posthumously, if someone has passed away and somebody who you deeply respect who's no
Yeah.
longer alive. So, who would that be?
It would probably be Indra Nui,
Okay.
just to understand her, and she speaks really well and she has really
Yeah.
great ideas. So probably lunch
True.
with Indra Nui would be interesting. Um,
Right. I'm not sure
Posthumously,
if I can facilitate that, but I'll try and see what we can do there. But I
I
mean,
would
yeah, very
also,
inspirational personality for sure.
yes.
Yeah.
Posthumously, I don't know. This is a bit hard. I'm a big history buff, so it would
Okay.
probably have to be somebody from some historical figure.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe Cleopatra. She
Wow.
sounds really interesting. uh,
Fantastic.
yeah, to be a leader in that day and age, she has to have had something, right?
Perfect. Perfect. That's a great answer. Okay. One. What's the one office perk you think that should be there in every organization?
Um, I think quiet spaces,
Yeah.
like places
Much
where people
needed.
can just go in for some deep thought. I think that's something that, and it's I don't know if it is a perk, but I think it's a necessity to just have quiet corners.
Absolutely, makes sense. Deep work is, I think, becoming so crucial, especially in this multifaceted environment that we live in. Okay, next question. If you weren't in HR, right? And I know that you've started with journalism. So, if you weren't in HR, what career would you have pursued?
I
Would it
wish
have
I
been
could.
journalism or something else?
I wish I could have been a writer, and this is something that I hope, Ravi, that if you meet me in 10 years down
It'll
the line, I would, I can say that I have done it. But I would like to write
happen. Right.
children's books. I think that is where,
Fantastic.
yeah, all my ideas are there.
Perfect. So I've grown on Ruskin Bond throughout childhood, so I know how great those stories I just weaves into you. But I'm hoping that I'll get to read yours pretty soon. And that's a parallel, Sampada, you can start now itself. I mean, you just
Yes.
need to find some time.
And CocoBlu sells books on Amazon, so I have the
Absolutely,
contacts. I just have to put my mind to it.
absolutely. And I hope to see one pretty coming pretty soon from your side. Okay, coffee or tea, and how do you take it? Is it
Coffee.
black? Okay,
The first cup is usually with milk and sugar, and after that,
okay.
it's black.
Right. And what's your take on health today? I mean, especially with so much happening around focused on intermittent fasting and
Yeah.
let's say gluten free and a lot of discussions around it. What's your take on health as of today?
I think I'm just so glad that the conversation is up close and in the center, right? That health is becoming important, but it shouldn't get to the point where you become obsessed with it. Of course, living healthy is required, and I'm so glad that the new generation is consciously doing it.
True.
Um, and it has to be, I think there is everything starts and ends with good health. Like there is no work that is possible if that is that's a hygiene factor now. So
True.
yes, definitely really really important, and unfortunately I think people of my generation have realized that a little later in life, but
Yeah.
there's always time to work on it.
True. True. And any specific measures that you're doing at CocoBlu from a health standpoint? Anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so there is a lot of focus on mental health today. So we have an employee assistance program, which I don't think is very unique to us. A lot of people do that. Um, a lot of focus on preventive health, right? So we have connected with working with a partner that helps us with creating a wallet for folks to go and use for annual health checkups, just so that before you need it, you know which are the areas to focus on. And small things like because our average demographic is really young, 33 years old. People eat out a lot. We got a tuck shop vendor that serves relatively healthy food. I think there's no healthy food outside of home, but relatively healthy food as compared to the junk that you eat on the road. So small things like that, which will help people have a little more, conscious steps towards leading healthy lives.
Perfect. Now, obviously, I'm a true blue Darwinian, so a couple of questions on the rapid fire to round up on Darwinbox. Which is your favorite module
Um,
in Darwinbox?
the vibe.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, vibe is my favorite module, and we've launched that because I just find that really engaging, and it's a great platform for communication.
Right. And then I'm going to put you on a tighter spot. Which is your favorite feature in Darwinbox? I mean, not module, but any particular feature that you really like or maybe are addicted to, sort of.
So I'm a super admin on Darwinbox. So every time there is somebody new that comes in, I don't know, I should be saying that out loud. I go and check out like the personal data, and it's good fun to see where people are from.
Okay.
So,
So the profile section on
the
core is
profile
your
section,
favorite
yeah.
feature.
Yeah, just
Okay. Okay.
helps me get to know the person a little better.
Right. So one final roundup question, Sampada. Of course, I mean this is something which is going to be watched by like the 1,500 plus folks that are there on the Changemakers community. And as I mentioned to you earlier, that it's a mix of people in terms of experience. Any message that you would want to leave them with as we close the discussion today?
I think the message would be again going back to what we started the conversation with, right? It is to do with what is the role of HR today? How do we get perceived by business? And I think it is a huge responsibility that each one of us carry. There is a lot of perception of HR being rangoli competitions, etc. Well, and that is important. That is, I mean, we need to bring in the fun element, but we need to be seen beyond that. And I think the only way that we can do that is by becoming experts in a particular subject. So if there is today a change that the organization needs to make on a person, my measure of success is that it cannot happen without me being consulted. As an HR, I think that is a yardstick that I will measure, that I have to really truly be a partner and not just a supporting arm. HR has to become a partner to business. And in order to do that, one, become a subject matter expert in one particular area of HR at minimum. And secondly, be present for all business conversations. We cannot be far removed from what is happening in business. You and the CEO got to talk the same language. So that has to happen.
So I think so. You're saying basically an approach wherein you're integrating more with what the business wants and understanding the business better and focusing on at least one avenue which you're really going to be good at within the functions. Great. Thank you so much, Sampada. It's been an absolute delight to have you with us today in this discussion. Of course, there's a lot more that I would like to talk, but of course, I mean, you have to look at the audience and the scope of coverage from that perspective as well. But it was an absolute delight to have you with us on Know Your Changemakers, and hope your journey and the story that you've conveyed to us today is inspirational to the folks on the community as well.
Thank you for having me, Ravi. It was a really nice conversation. You did put me on the spot several times.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
and I'm sorry for that, but generally I feel that the interactions are more lively if we try to do that. But I think you came out tops in terms of answering all of them brilliantly.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ravi. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.